News Channel 5 Network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you're with us tonight. We have what I think is going to be a good conversation tonight. We are talking about gentrification and incarceration rates in North Nashville, in that zip code 37208, which was recognized as the zip code with the highest incarceration rate in the entire country. There's a new film out, a short documentary, that highlights work that is being done in that community to turn things around. And throughout the course of the night, we'll play some parts of that documentary, and we're going to talk to somebody who's prominently featured in that documentary, Rasheedat Fetuga. She is the CEO and founder of Gideons Army, and she is joining us, as all of our guests do now, via Zoom. Hello, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, and you're in this film, which highlights what's happening in that zip code, in 37208. And we've heard some of the challenges, and I'm going to talk about the film in a moment, but I just want to ask, as we kick things off, what has COVID done? What have you seen in the last, year, few months in 37208, as a result of COVID? How has that impacted?
One thing that I had mentioned briefly in the film is that North Nashville, having the highest incarceration rates, originally the highest rates of violence in the city, and then hit by a tornado, and then by COVID. It really decimated the community in so many ways, from housing to income, but violence also. Well, during the tornado, the violence interrupters, were completely out there. And violence didn't really increase at that time. But then when COVID hit and we had to just change the way that we were moving, just as we were figuring it out, because, nobody really knew or understood what COVID was or how it would impact us or the work. All across the country, we began to see violence rise. However, we're pretty much able to figure it out and bring the violence back down, but it also changed the way, it changed our focus. So instead of kind of digging deeper and working on more economic security, it became that we needed to just make sure that people had their daily bread, day-to-day needs every day. From delivering food, we delivered over 60,000 meals during that time. Making sure that people's rent was paid and that the lights could be cut on, or that folks didn't lose their homes to tax foreclosures. There were just so many issues that were already there, but were magnified because of COVID.
So you're
the work didn't stop.
Oh, okay. So you're the CEO and founder of Gideon's Army. We've talked a little bit about Gideon's Army, but tell us what that is and what it is doing in North Nashville.
Okay, so Gideon's Army is a grassroots organization, which means it is led by the people who are impacted by the issues that we focus on, which is school push-out, school-to-prison pipeline, as a lot of people call it, as well as youth violence. And so we work in 4 primary areas. We're in the schools, courts, community, and then we also work and focus on community safety. So Gideon's Army was the main lead partner for the Driving While Black report. But we also have several programs like our violence interruption program. We work with victims of gun violence. So we have trauma services. Gideon's Army does a lot of deeper work that a lot of people don't know about. Like when someone is harmed by violence, we are in the home within 24 hours, if anybody wants us, of course, but we're in the home within 24 hours. We're at the hospitals. We help to plan funerals. We cook the food for the repast. And then we're with the families thereafter. We make sure that the children can integrate back into school if there are children in the home. Because in metro schools, you get a couple weeks off, but if you lose a brother to gun violence, and if you've witnessed that, it's really, really hard to come back and just fall in line with the things that you need to do. So, we work very closely with the teachers, the social workers, to support the families. We've paid for funerals. I want to say we spent about $15,000 in this last year just supporting families and paying for funerals. In the schools, we have restorative justice programs that are alternatives to suspension and expulsion. In the courts, we before COVID, we were in a juvenile detention center, and also now working with the public defender's office as well as the district attorney general's office to have restorative diversions in general sessions court. So Gideons Army, we do a lot, and it's surrounded around community self-empowerment and building systems and diversions that are led by the community, but of course in partnership with many of our city agencies.
And it's not an overnight thing. This was started in 2010, so we're 10 years in, right?
Yes.
We're 10 years in. And I want to ask about the film next, but as we're talking about Gideon's Army, there was some criticism. I mean, it made a campaign commercial and that kind of thing. What do you think? You know, when you see that, when you see the criticism or you see it in a campaign commercial, what did you think?
I didn't really care, if you want to know the truth. I'm very unbothered by these things. You know, as long as the children are happy, we're taking care of families, we're looking out for teachers. Shoot, I mean, a lot of people feel that Gideon's Army is anti-police, but the work that we do, it keeps communities safer. It keeps police officers safer. You know, so I don't really worry about the naysayers. I kind of see it as just a process of change. You have early adopters and people who stand with us, and it's enough people who are impacted by the work that we do. It's enough people who love the work that we do that, you know, folks will hop on the train or they'll get left. So,
and this was highlighted in this documentary. I'm talking about now. It's a 18-minute short documentary. It's very powerful, and we'll be playing parts of it. But how did they approach you? How did this film come about, as far as you know?
From what I understand, Fiverr came to do some work with some Black businesses in North Nashville, primarily Slim and Huskies, and then they found out about the statistics around 37208 and incarceration and violence, and wanted to dig into what was happening in the community. And then they found out about the work of Gideon's Army. And so they reached out. I didn't know that it was going to feature us so strongly. I thought it was going to be just a lot more partners. And so when I saw it, I was extremely surprised, but also very touched, because I love the way that they captured the children and the love and the work that we do. And when we have those people who criticize and focus on the fact that we would rather spend money pouring it into the children than we would like to spend it on incarcerating them when they're adults, you know, that criticism, I feel like the Fiverr documentary really, it just naturally negated all of that. Like, it naturally shows what we do and what we're hoping to accomplish. So I was really touched by it.
It is. It's powerful. And Fiverr is the producer, right? I mean, that when you're talking about Fiverr, that's the producer. And this is a national thing.
Yes, very national. It was featured on vox.com. And for people who don't know what Fiverr is, it's a really cool site where, like, you can go and, like, if you want your website built, or you want somebody to read you a bedtime story or make your brochures, you know, you can go, and then there are people that you contract with. It's kind of like Uber for creatives, where, you know, it is shared web space. And I don't think they've ever done anything like this before, but they did it so beautifully. And the film crew is from Nashville. So it was locals who were connected to the city in a deeper way. It wasn't like strangers came in. And I thought that was also very, wise of Fiverr to have people who are from Nashville.
So this was a 2018 Brookings Institution study that said 37208 has the highest incarceration rate of any zip code in the entire country. Gideon's Army had started back in 2010. We're now 2 years, almost 3 years removed from that study. Are things better now, or where do you think things are in that zip code right now?
I wouldn't really say that things are better in that zip code. I think that the city needs to do a better job at investing and righting the wrongs and the harms that have occurred in that community. You know, that's the thing. The strange thing about life is we don't always create the issues, but the momentum is so strong that sometimes we have to take more powerful action in order to stop that momentum. And those actions historically haven't been taken. But I will say that there's some things that are in the pipeline, like that I really think will be powerful for North Nashville, from the restorative justice diversion program with the district attorney general's office. The mayor is really looking into investing in violence interruption, which is totally new. He's the third, he's the third mayor that I've met with and who's really seeming to take it seriously. But we need to focus very deeply on economic investment into that community, especially when you have gentrification. And for those who've been in Nashville, you know, long enough to remember East Nashville or Germantown and what happened to those communities, the kind of indigenous culture of those communities has been completely erased. And that's what's going to happen in North Nashville if we don't take action to save these homes. But a lot of people in North Nashville, they don't own their properties, they're rentals. And so it just really limits a lot of what can be done. But we need to do all that we can.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, 10 years from now, what does 37208 look like? Because gentrification is well underway. You can certainly point to other parts of town that have changed dramatically over the last few years. And how do you stop that from happening? How does 37208 not succumb to gentrification 10 years from now?
I would say that, you know, with zoning and our council taking more action, I think educating families who do own their homes about that they don't have to sell their homes, that there are so many other ways that they can have a little bit more financial security, but also keep their properties. The issue that I've seen is when council tries to do anything, the state preempts any efforts that they make. And that's common with almost anything our council does, you know, that's progressive. So I honestly don't know at this point. I know that the mayor's office has some people who are working on it. One person that I've been really building a relationship with is Eric Brown in the mayor's office, who has some really great ideas about what can be done in North Nashville. And then, you know, I think we're just gonna have to be creative.
One of the things highlighted in the film is the violence interrupters. There's a good segment in there on those. Tell us about what are violence interrupters?
Violence interrupters are credible messengers who come from the community. They've, you know, they're born and raised in North Nashville, and they've really just turned their lives around, but they have experiences that mirror a lot of the children and the young folks who need their advice. I will tell you, the violence interrupters are community superheroes. That's how I see them, because there's so many times that they literally stand between people and guns. And so they interrupt the transmission of violence. They interrupt the violence by de-escalating in situations, having restorative interventions, just figuring out what is the problem, who's been harmed, how can we make things right in this situation, and then also just helping to prevent retaliations. but it goes even deeper than that. Like, these violence interrupters that we have here in Nashville are a special kind because they really breathe love into the community. Like, they focus heavily on community building, community relationships, mentoring, connecting people in the community to jobs and counseling, making sure the children are in school. They do circles in the schools. Chef True, he runs, or ran because of COVID. We're not there right now, but we have a meditation room at McKissick Middle, which is super cool. The children love it. Everything from meditation to martial arts. We have school-based violence interrupters. Darius, who is also housed at McKissick, was a student at McKissick, who I think he was suspended and stuff a lot too, probably with his little bad self. But it's really fun to come back, into North Nashville, into McKissick, where he went to school, and then run these restorative programs. And so, and he's really good at it. Our programs are literacy rich, they're art based. And so children aren't just coming in as an alternative to suspension where they're being punished, where they're being fussed at, but it's extremely restorative. We're teaching social emotional learning skills, conflict transformation, conflict resolution. And then once the children have really processed their experience, then they're able to go back and have conversations with their teachers. And we support the teachers as well. So our violence interruption program is extremely comprehensive, like super comprehensive, from the schools. And I love, just really, really quickly, that the violence interrupters can be in the schools. And then when the children get out of school, the violence interrupters are in the community. And when they think they're gonna sneak out the house in the middle of the night and be somewhere they're not supposed to be, the violence interrupters are there too. Like, they're just everywhere.
Violence interrupters are unarmed, right? So they're not carrying a gun. Do you see them as a kind of police force? What about that? Are they like, I guess, address that?
So they're not the police, but they do build community safety. I would say that they're community mothers and fathers, like going back to just the way the communities used to be run, where you had a village. That's what I would see. I do see an impact that they have, which is, I think, what a lot of people want to get from policing, which is reduction in violence, reduction in crime, reduction in homicides. In Cumberland View, which was formerly known as Dodge City, which was one of the most violent communities in the city, we have had 0 shootings and 0 homicides. And I want to say 10 months. I want to also send a shout out to MDHA, who is a really, strong partner with us, for having us there so closely in Cumberland View. But I would say, no, they're not police, but the impact that they have, I believe, is greater because of the relationship building, the services they provide, and the impact that they have on the community.
In this documentary, there's a council person who is quoted as saying, it's by design, inequality is by design to keep people in place. It's well documented, some of the problems. I feel like politicians run and they talk about, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix this, and yet for many years it hasn't been fixed. Some might say it's not gotten better at all. And so when you hear someone say it's by design, inequality is by design to keep people in their place, how confident are you that this can be fixed?
Systemic racism is a multi-headed beast. When you destroy one part of it, a lot of times another head grows, another aspect of it rises up. But I really feel like Nashville can be a model city. I believe that there are a lot of people who share the vision for a better Nashville. I believe in the goodness of the people in Nashville, and I believe in the communities that we work in, the families that we work with, and our partners. I believe in our partners, or we wouldn't work with them. I really believe that Nashville can change. I believe that we can be a model city. I believe that, we can see a reduction in suspensions and expulsions, and that some of these disparities can be reduced or eliminated. But I need folks to do the work. Like, we've got to do the work, and we've got to do it together. And, sometimes, and I'm not experiencing this now, but in the past, there have just been issues, folks say, oh, the community needs to take ownership and the community needs to deal with these problems. And when the community does, then sometimes, agencies can block the community out from doing the work. People still complain. But I'm not really seeing that so much now. And so I'm extremely hopeful. About what we can do, especially seeing, that there are no shootings, no homicides in Cumberland View, that, people are feeling safer, and that we can have events and be out all night and have a good time when you used to have to go in before dark. Like, I love Cumberland View. I love the people of Cumberland View, and they have been an example for what Nashville can do and who we can be.
Is Gideon's Army or just this talk of turning 3728 around, this grassroots sort of talk, is it coming from, we can't depend on just our politicians to do it? It's got to come from within. Is that part of what's at play here?
That's a lot of what's at play. It's definitely about community self-empowerment, trusting the wisdom of the children and the families in these communities to know what they need. And they, okay, so let me tell you, before we started this violence interruption program, there were so many children who were being killed in North Nashville, especially connected to Pearl Cone High School, that Pearl Cone had become like this memorial site. We were having to cancel school to have circles, to hold memorials, to do balloon releases, and all of these different things to grieve so much that the children began to be almost apathetic to it. Like, they didn't want to sit in the circles anymore. They were tired of drawing pictures and writing cards and poetry and speeches and all of these things that we tried to do with them to help them heal. They wanted to, and I won't even say apathetic, like it was a time of apathy, but then it was kind of righteous indignation. They were just like, we have to do something about this. And so the principal at the time, Dr. Sonia Stewart, allowed me to bring together, well, we did it together. We brought together 75 children from Pearl Cone High School. And those 75 children, we spent an entire day just exploring what violence looks like in their communities, in their homes. What does it look like in society to them? And what did they think the root causes were? So then from there, we explored different models of violence interruption, violence prevention, and violence intervention. Then they did their research, and they pulled out what they felt like would work best in North Nashville. So I can take credit for this all day, but it wasn't me. It was the children. It was the children that planned this. It was the children that developed it. They created the interview process. They interviewed the violence interrupters. They called and told them who was hired and who wasn't hired. And so, the model that we're using is extremely, extremely powerful because it is grassroots. It is led by the children. They did feel like the city was having so many meetings about violence interruption and youth violence, but the children weren't authentically engaged in those meetings. It was a lot of times people speaking for them, or people who or youth who weren't really impacted. Like, these are the children whose brothers were shot, whose sisters were killed, who lost their parents to gun violence, who put this program together. And yes, righteous indignation. They were very sick and tired of it, tired of asking the city for money. Gideons Army, we originally modeled after Cure Violence, got a lot of support from them when we started. And in the 10-year history of Cure Violence, Gideons Army is the first organization that raised our own money to launch a violence interruption program without the help of the governor or the mayor. We did it ourselves. And I think it was better that way. I honestly think it was better that way. Now, we need money, to keep it going. We need donations from anybody who's watching, and from the city and from the state. Also, thank you to Department of Human Services, who's one of our biggest funders for this program. But yes, just definitely out of wanting to do it ourselves, being tired of waiting, but also knowing that there's just wisdom in our experiences, and that we don't have to go to the government to get the answers, that we're wise enough.
Reverend Fuzz is on the line. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and we'll take Reverend Fuzz right off the bat. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thank you.